All right, so today I'm catching up with an old friend, Scott Wilson from Swim People, and he is going to be talking to us about how to stand out in the swim school space by focusing on developing your people. So, yeah, good to chat with you, Scott.
Yeah, great to see you, Lane. Yeah, always enjoy our chats. I get a lot out of them.
Yeah, likewise. So I understand you recently spoke at the Recreation New Zealand Waves Conference, which is an annual conference, and you were presenting there on the importance of providing feedback to swim teachers to grow staff engagement and teacher performance. So, yeah, did you want to touch on that presentation and what your kind of core message was there?
Yeah, absolutely, Lane. It was really based around the encouragement to the swim school leaders, and not just the swim school leaders, because this conference is often attended by the leaders of lifeguarding teams and operation teams at swimming pools. So it's not just the swim school space.
Yep.
It was really about encouraging for them to explore the opportunities, for them to improve their staff by creating a feedback program. A coaching program, because over the last in my belief and what I've seen is that probably over the last 10 to 15 years, a lot of swim schools have focused on lifting the customer experience through processes and systems, through technology, and now we've got AI coming aboard, and all of those above. I'm a strong believer in processes and systems and technology; they're all vital. But I've just kind of challenged them to see that maybe is it getting out of balance, and their investment or their focus on improving their people has become less important in their operation eyes. In my eyes, the way to stand out, create raving fans, is to have your people improve their craft. They're better at their craft. That often drives customer experience, and it also drives staff satisfaction. So, and it's just really based around that, and also encouraging them to explore other options than the tried and true method of doing some great staff training at the start, getting your swim teachers independently being able to teach and deliver good lessons. And then development through, often it's 3 to 4 kind of workshop clinics, half days, sessions that they do. Often a lot's crammed in, a lot of information. They're assuming that all the staff learn the same way. And often it's connected to a social event, which then can become the highlight of the actual of the day. So my message was to explore options. What can you do, especially to deliver shorter, more individualized coaching on a regular basis, which is purposeful, impactful, fits the individual, alongside those other group sessions that they do. So that was my main message.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you're right. There's been a big focus on technology and systems and processes, and often things swing too far the wrong way, where it's always about keeping a balance and equilibrium, and sometimes we need to adjust back the other way. As much as I'm an advocate of technology and process, I've always said that it should be maintaining the human to human element and not losing sight of that, and technology should amplify that as well. But I do feel there's probably been a little swing too far to that technology side. So
and that's what I'm seeing and hearing from some of my clients too, Lane, that they share with me that I need help, I need support myself as a leader, but often it's based around my people, because they know their technology is strong, their processes and systems are strong, and it's their people is what kind of keeps them awake at night.
And that might flow nicely into my next question, which is, what was the kind of driver for you to kind of investigate this area, the importance of staff development? Why have you been kind of focused on that more recently?
Yeah, it's probably more recently. It's kind of, when you look back, you kind of think, actually, I've been bubbling away in my mind now for, is it a decade? That type of thing. The challenge of staff retention, staff turnover, customer satisfaction, staff satisfaction, general customer feedback, often a constant need to recruit out there looking for the golden nuggets, and, you know, taking that approach. And then also, especially from longer tenure staff, the feedback that they're offering to some of the leaders at the program is saying, we've got to do something a little bit different. It's not getting us the results that we want. And my study kind of came up and really clearly showed that staff that were not receiving regular strength-based feedback were less engaged. Or you've put it the other way, the people who were receiving strength-based feedback are more engaged. Drivers like staff absentees. And it made me think that I just kind of more thinking along the lines that a staff member may be more inclined to be absent from work when they're not as confident in delivering the swimming lesson as you think they are. And sometimes it might be, for example, if they're working on a Saturday and they're teaching maybe 8 lessons, it might only even be one of those 8 which is making them not engage with the whole 8 lessons, and so they stay away. So that was one of my thinking. Knowledge, gaining that with experience is important, but can we accelerate that improvement of their craft by giving them coaching? I also like to do a little exercise with the clients that I work with, and help them form some definition and in some ways rate their swim teachers. And do they fit into the competent bucket, a good bucket, or a great bucket? And again, you know, the leaders are quite uncomfortable doing this. And so I find that my lead working with them can take away the biases that they have, and actually be really true to who is competent, who's good, and who's great, and then try to move more competent people to good, more good to great, with coaching to the individual.
Yeah, that reminds me, with a lot of our clients in the past, we would encourage them to measure progression rates for teachers, so that have some kind of data point. Obviously, you take the data with a grain of salt, but it kind of sets up a filter to identify who may need more guidance and training and education, who has a really high students of progressing, and who are the ones that might have a low. So then you can look deeper into that and see why and what intervention can take place. So,
and that's where technology helps a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, and
you can pull that data now compared to when I first started in the industry. You can pull it so, you know, much quicker, and more accurate. And again, it takes away your bias to actually say, well, let's deal with some facts here.
Yeah. So I want you to take us deeper with your WAVES presentation, and if we need to extract the, I guess, best strategies from that, what are some 2 or 3 points you can share with us on that staff development piece?
Yeah, there was kind of eight main points I kind of shared with them, but let me dive into 3 of them, right? And one of them was that the provider of the feedback, so the person providing the feedback, needs to be credible in the eyes of the recipient. And too often I see someone who comes in and in some ways isn't too connected with the person they're about to give feedback to. Maybe someone who sits in the office, or someone who doesn't even work in their particular shift, I'll call it. And that's the person providing feedback. So, and that often is a barrier for the feedback, which is in great intent, but it doesn't get received well. So it's really important that the person providing the feedback is someone that has credibility in the eyes of the recipient. The other part was the timing and the circumstances, when to provide the feedback, the coaching. What's the right time to do that? What's the circumstances to do that? And I touched on earlier about these big workshop groups, half-day development sessions that swim schools often have. Often that's not the right time. You know, do it when it's right for the individual, when it's most appropriate for them. And then the other part that I really tried to stress to them was made them think about how can the recipient play it back. So to be very, for you, if you're providing the feedback, to check in that it was received, what you said was clear and was understood. And so they should be able to play it back to you. So then you know you've done the right job with that coaching. So that was kind of the 3 of the kind of 8 points that I dived into at my presentation.
Yeah. When you say play it back, can you give an example? Is it as simple as getting them to kind of verbalize in their words what they've taken out of the discussion?
Yeah. So if they could play it back straight away, fantastic. You could check in. What was your main message you took out of our conversation?
Yep.
And so one of the other points I touched on was saying, this type of feedback, which I think is individualized coaching, make it, of course, it has to be at least 1, but don't go over 3 points. If you're going more than 4 or 5, if you're going into 4, 5, 6 or more points that they need to receive coaching on, you've left the coaching too long. So if you make it 1, 2, or 3 points, then it's easy for them to take those on board, and in their words or their way of showing back to you that they've actually understood of what you were sharing with them.
Yeah. Do you have any advice around structuring these feedback processes? Like, should there be a timeline or schedule, like a regular process or timing? Because I find when things aren't kind of scheduled or there's no frequency plan, 6 months can go by and, with the blink of an eye, and we don't have an opportunity to do any of that. So what are your thoughts around that? Any suggestions?
I think if you're a leader, so in a lot of swim schools, they might have a number of swim lessons happening at the same time, and supporting those people may be a person has a role like they might call them a supervisor or a wet deck or a progress advisor, that type of role, who is overviewing how those lessons are happening in that shift. And part of that person's role is to actually be identifying what coaching moments are out there, what coaching opportunities are out there in front of me today, and then actually deciding when is the right time for that individual to deliver that coaching. So for some swim schools, for example, they may do lessons each half hour, and each half hour is made up of 25 minutes of lessons and then a 5-minute break between lessons. And that to me is a perfect opportunity where you can be working with a person or a couple of people during that 5-minute time. It may work just before the lessons. It may be after the lessons. It could be tomorrow, it could be next week, but it should be on a regular basis. So the person's role is, rather than just being the administrator of what's happening in the lessons, they're actually becoming that shift group, that team, that small team they've got in front of them. They are becoming their coach. And they should be looking at ways that they can identify those coaching moments and then taking advantage of those rather than delaying them. Because as we all know, when you delay, often it becomes a bigger thing than what it was. And the impact then becomes a bit more emotion into it instead of that real clear coaching moment.
Yeah. Awesome. So in finishing up our messaging today, what was the final kind of messaging that you had for the delegates at Waves?
Well, of course, it's, make sure you understand if it's your role as a leader, take it on board. It's a great opportunity. It's very satisfying to coach other people. I think most people want some coaching. And the thing I flipped around at the end was, don't call it feedback, because most of us don't like feedback. So flip it around, give it a name. And if you can give it a name, and some of the clients I've worked with, they've called a program called the Coach 300, for example. Now, the Coach 300 is basically based around coaching with 300 seconds. So if it was going to take more than 5 minutes, 300 seconds, you'd left that coaching moment too long. You should have been working with that person a little bit earlier. Other programs I've worked with, clients I've worked with, we called it beanstalk, because a beanstalk grows. So give it a name. And when you say, hey, Lane, let's catch up for a beanstalk.
Mm-hmm.
Lane knows, Scott knows what that 5 minutes is all about.
Mm.
It gets us through those introduction soft talk that happens.
Yeah.
So we can get straight into it. We know it's coaching, and then we can move on. And then we can have those other connections, those other relationships building with the individual or across the team. The other part was, strength-based feedback program, coaching program will lift team engagement. It's very clear in my research, my reading, that will happen. I think it really is the difference in swim schools. If you're a leader, your job is to grow others. And really, just to go back to the first part I said, to stand out in the sector by performance and by service delivery, use your people, coach your people, and they'll sprinkle their magic.
Yeah, I really like that reframing of feedback. A lot of organizations have, performance reviews and that kind of thing. And I don't think anyone likes feeling like they're under the microscope and their performance is being analyzed. Reframing that as a more positive, coaching or whatever wording you're assigning to that can totally reframe that. And
well, it goes back to what I mentioned. The person providing the coaching needs to be credible, and that by doing regular coaching is one of the ways you can build your credibility.
Yeah.
In front of your, the people that you're responsible to lead and work with.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So that's what it was all about. A lot of fun, and I really enjoyed presenting. And the good thing was the takeout wasn't, I was telling the story from the swim school space, but other people could relate to it in their situation in the aquatic space.
Yeah. Well, I think it's relevant for all in that space. And I think there needs to be ongoing improvement. As you said at the start, maybe this area has been neglected a little bit as our focus has shifted, and there needs to be a calibration back towards that. And at the end of the day, with this swim school, the quality of your lessons and teaching and relationships is really what can stand you out from your competitors. So getting that area and investing in that area, I think is critical.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was my message, Lane.
Awesome.
Thanks for allowing me to share.
No worries. And if people want to know more about you and how you can potentially help them or guide them on any of this kind of content, what's the best way that they can reach out to you, Scott?
Well, the business name is Swim People. So I've got a website called Swim People, swimpeople.com.au. They could work through LinkedIn for Scott Wilson, and email address of scott.swimpeople@gmail.com.
Yep, great.
I'd love to start with a conversation, because I'm very clear that I can help certain things, but other things that it's not my expertise. I certainly can connect them with the people that maybe are going to work with them, which they're looking for.
Yeah. Well, we'll also pop your website up on our blog and share that with our audience so they can easily get in touch with you. But from our perspective, we've had a lot of really positive conversations with you, Scott. So really appreciate you sharing with us again.
Hey, thanks a lot, Lane.
Thanks, Scott.